The Christian faith came to Scotland about 1800 years ago. But what has Christianity ever done for Scotland? In this series, we seek to highlight the people and movements that transformed our Scottish culture.
When Frederick Douglass arrived in Edinburgh in 1846, he was immediately appointed as Scotland's anti-slavery agent. This black American had escaped from the blood-stained hell of slavery, and he went on to become one of the most famous black abolitionists in history. But why did he come to Edinburgh? He found that here he was honoured as an equal human being, and he loved to travel around the country absorbing the history, particularly of people who had fought for freedom against oppression and slavery. When Jesus began his ministry, his first Bible text was from the prophet Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour." In the Roman Empire, slavery was commonplace, and slaves were usually regarded as subhuman. The Apostle Paul said, "Were you a slave when you were called? Don't let it trouble you, although if you can gain your freedom, do so." Early Christians soon got involved in seeking emancipation for slaves, with church collections being made with which to ransom them. In some cases, Christians would actually sell themselves into slavery to redeem the slaves. Here in Scotland, we find Columba in the 6th century freeing an Irish slave girl, and later Queen Margaret in the Middle Ages ransoming English slaves from cruel masters. Usually we think of the Christian politician William Wilberforce and his unflagging zeal to liberate slaves in the British Empire as being the person who spearheaded the abolitionist movement. But long before the Emancipation Law was passed in Britain in 1833, others had been working hard to liberate slaves. In 1769, David Spens, a slave in Fife, became a Christian and was baptised as a member of Wemyss Church. He stood for freedom and was supported by some church ministers, their congregations and some lawyers, and he was liberated. In 1788, the Reverend Robert Walker of Canongate Kirk in the Royal Mile challenged the church leaders in Edinburgh, and they petitioned Parliament to abolish slavery. After former slave Olaudah Equiano gave his account to the Church Assembly here in 1792, Scotland sent 185 petitions to Westminster. In 1830, the Reverend Dr. Andrew Thompson led the movement here to put pressure on Parliament. The politician, Sir Henry Brougham from Edinburgh, worked hard in London to get laws passed against slavery. All of these Edinburgh people were players in the victory over slavery with their key fellow Christians in England, Thomas Clarkson, William Wilberforce and others. In 1833, the Slavery Abolition Act was passed by Parliament, outlawing slavery in the British Empire. In the early church in Jerusalem, provision and care was made for everyone who had a genuine need. This model was also taken to Scotland by the Christian monks who pioneered basic welfare for the poor and needy. Sadly, by the 16th century, many of the monks had become corrupt and greedy, and they did not fulfil their responsibility. On January the 1st, 1559, the reformers nailed the beggar's summons to the doors of many of the religious buildings in Scotland, beginning in Edinburgh. The monks were challenged to release their wealth or get out, so that the poor and needy would be cared for properly. The Book of Discipline, written by the reformers in 1560, states, "Every several kirk or church must provide for the poor within itself, for the widow and the fatherless, the aged, the impotent or lamed, in every city and other parts of this realm." This foundational document contained the vision for caring for every needy and poor person in Scotland. In the 18th century, the new town was built in Edinburgh to attract the wealthy and prosperous, and by the 1820s, this city became the second wealthiest in Britain after London. This meant that the poor were often neglected in the old town and slums emerged. Crime, prostitution and drunkenness were prevalent. The Christians realised that although providing better homes, healthcare, education and food for the poor was a good thing, the people needed to be shown how to be transformed as human beings through the power and love of Christ. There was an extraordinary Christian mission movement to help the poor in Edinburgh in the 19th century. David Naismith came from Glasgow in 1832 with his slogan, "May the glory of God and the salvation of souls be your chief, your only end." And he set up the Edinburgh City Mission on the Royal Mile. Soon missionaries were working among the poor, following the vision given to them. "You will convert the houses that were tenanted by men of the foulest passions into churches of the Redeemer, where the Lord the Spirit will dwell and the God of salvation will be loved and served. You will arrest the progress of vice and promote the interest of virtue. You will make our poor, our ignorant, our degraded population stand forth in all that freshness and fairness of moral and of spiritual excellence." An extra impetus was given to them when the Reverend Dr. Thomas Guthrie and other ministers joined the challenging task of transforming the slums. By 1875, there were 130 missionaries working together for a city of 200,000. Churches were filled with people who had broken with their past. Their children now went to school. Free healthcare was available. Savings banks and loan libraries were set up. The whole condition of the poor had been lifted and transformed by these Christian revival movements. Inspired by the Christians, the town council got behind the movement, regularly requesting advice and help from the missionaries. Sir Henry Littlejohn, an elder from St. Giles, pioneered the new sanitary conditions of the city, transforming an open sewage system that spread disease into an underground system of piping. Stirred by the transformation of the city through God's grace, hundreds of missionaries were trained up in Edinburgh and sent all over the world to plant churches, set up schools, colleges, universities, healthcare and hospitals, and bring about social reforms for the blessing of millions. We hope you have been inspired and challenged by this video. Christian Heritage Edinburgh is a charity and ministry, and we seek to bring out the amazing story of the Christian faith in this city and nation, which has had such an impact on the world. If you have any questions, please contact us on this email address: info@christianheritageedinburgh.org.uk, or if you would like to find out more about how you can know Christ personally, then click the link in the credits or go to www.christianheritageedinburgh.org.uk.